Next up, we have Richard Gaspard, and I apologize again to Richard once he gets on if I'm butchering his name. Product specialist with PreSonus as well as Fender. And Richard's going to be talking about achieving great live and broadcast signals using only one mixer. So this is going to be for all of you audio folks out there. Richard, am I too early for you, or do you think you're ready to begin?
No. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you wonderfully. And Mike, if you want to go ahead and spotlight Richard, you can take it away.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. Just appreciate getting to know the folks at PTZOptics. My name is Richard Gaspard, and Tess, you did get that right. I am the product specialist for PreSonus, focusing mainly on hardware systems for all of North America. Before that, I was the media director of a pretty large church in Lafayette, Louisiana. And before that, I was chief audio engineer at Oral Roberts Television. And while I was there, I taught the jazz ensemble in the School of Music at ORU. I'm a bass player, composer, arranger, producer, all of those things. I'm still very much involved in ministry, although I'm not doing it full time anymore. From my role at PreSonus, I handle a lot of house of worship issues and customers. I'm a bass player at my church here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. It's funny when this first started, people mention Ash Wednesday. I'm right in the middle of Mardi Gras. Baton Rouge sits right between Lafayette, Louisiana, and New Orleans. So Mardi Gras season has been, just over with Ash Wednesday starting today. So I want to show you a couple of things about getting a good live signal for broadcast and for a good signal for broadcast and live. So I'm just going to share my screen here and go into this. So achieving great live and broadcast signals using only one mixer. If beyond the Zoom room, anyone has any questions, that's my email address. I work for PreSonus, but PreSonus is wholly owned and operated by Fender Guitars. And so, hence the fender.com email address and not PreSonus. So when we think of broadcast mixing, and I especially, when I think of broadcast mixing, my mind immediately goes to this. And, obviously I say this with a lot of snark and humor intended, but what do you mean your church doesn't have one of these? This is a proper broadcast mixer. And obviously no one's got this. This is, I don't remember whose truck this was that I pulled this from, but we're expected to create great broadcast audio from that people are used to hearing it coming from something like this. But, we've got something like this. This is the PreSonus Studio Live 32S. This is not going to be a sales pitch for PreSonus. I just needed to show a digital mixer, and what better digital mixer to show than the digital mixer that we sell. But what I want to show you today is possible to do even with an analog desk. And it's just principles of audio that I just kind of want to show you about, just different questions that I've gotten over the course of my working at PreSonus, especially since 2020. People were doing live in-house stuff, and then all of a sudden everybody needed to do broadcast. Well, the first thing people were doing was just taking an extra feed from the main output of their mixer and trying to create a broadcast mix out of that. And of course, that sounded terrible for most people, because if you have a loud drum set, they're hardly in the PA, which means they're hardly pulled up in the mixer, and everything that's quiet is now super loud on the stream and all of that. And then people started to do the digital audio workstation as a broadcast mixer in a separate room, or if they've got a digital mixer, going into like the nursing mother's room and trying to do a post fader aux mix for the nursing mother's room, and let that be the broadcast mix as well. And that's kind of where I want to approach what I'm going to talk to you today about. I have talked to so many people, mostly church folk, who say, we're happy with our mix that we're getting out to broadcast, but it's not loud enough, and there's nothing that I can do to get it loud enough. And I can't even get it loud enough for my compressor to be able to start to squash it a little bit. So I want to show you something that might be revolutionary for some. For some, it might be a situation where you're like, this wouldn't work for us. But I just want you to consider this, and this, if put into practice and done well, you can have a really good live mix coming main left and right, or main mono out of your mixer going to front of house, at mix position for your audience, as well as a good and hot broadcast mix going out, for streaming. It's interesting. When I started working at Oral Roberts Television, this was back in the 90s, HD TV really wasn't a thing then. I was there from 96 to 2000, and HD TV was really just getting its start. So I was mixing for the little 4-inch TV speaker, if 4 inches, more like 3 or 2 or whatever, and then the advent of HD TV came in, and we had to change things, to create a different broadcast mix for the larger speakers, the more high fidelity, flat screen TVs and whatnot, HD. And now everyone is watching everything on their phone, their laptop, on their iPad, their Surface Pro, and all of that. And so that's actually kind of gone back more to the old school standard definition way of creating a final mix. Today, we're not going to talk about how to mix something. We're not going to talk about where to put the bass in relation to the kick drum. We're not going to talk about EQ and everything. I'm really just talking about getting that overall level good and hot. So what we're really talking about is signal strength and gain structure versus volume. When I speak of volume, I'm talking about something that has been combined electronically in the mixer and then amplified over speakers. That's your scenario at front of house for your mix within your room. But then we also have another electronic signal that's at broadcast, but then is amplified not as much because it's just going to a small TV speaker, laptop speaker, iPhone, Android, and whatnot. So what we have is something that can be relatively low that's amplified a lot for front of house, for your main mix, your live mix with people in the room. But then you have something that needs to be really hot that's barely amplified at all to go to broadcast. But those two worlds are very, very different. So, and I'm going to show you some things that I think you can do to help rectify the two. So my setup that I'm using, I am going through a laptop here with PreSonus Capture. It's a multi-track recording and playback software. And then that is going into, behind me is a PreSonus 32R rack mixer. And from there, I'm going 32 AVB channels into the 32SC. And that is the mixer that I'm going to be controlling from this computer. So let me do another screen share, and we're going to start looking at some stuff here. So that is my 32SC mixer that we are going to be looking at. So I need to move a couple of windows around here to just, all right. So if I hit play and capture, notice I'm on my main mix, and this should look familiar to a lot of guys, especially church guys. We have signal that is barely coming in on each channel, And then we have faders that are up at decent levels. And then the main fader is way down low. And this is my typical church front of house setup. Now, if I go to my aux 1, which is going to be I created this as a post fader aux mix to be my broadcast mix. And so post fader, I put everything up at Unity. I let my front of house person worry about the transitions, bringing things in and out, so I don't have to do it via an iPad. Or even worse yet, if you're using an analog desk and you don't have access to this, you would do this physically on the mixer. But notice this is still pretty weak as my aux mix out. What we're looking at right now, and this is actually playing. You're not hearing it, but it's actually playing. So if I go into, I'm monitoring all of this through Studio One. You can see I've got the main mix. That makes no sense to use it for broadcast because I just can't get that loud enough. But let's go to my broadcast mix, and you can see that it's there, but I can't really hear it very well at all. So, I can do things like increase the volume. You can start to hear it. But notice, I've got a DBX 160 tube compression model. I can crank this all the way up. And then I can go ahead and crank I'm sorry? Did someone try to say something? So I can crank peak reduction up, and you can see it's not even lighting up any gain reduction whatsoever. So this is kind of what we have in a typical situation where we are trying to get a lot of volume out of something that's just not set up to get a lot of volume out of because it's super loud acoustically. Well, let's go back to my main mix here. And again, this is my main left and right. And notice all of my channels here, I have them gained down to -20. Now, my signal is coming in pretty hot, so I purposely gained them down. But what I see in a lot of scenarios is that people aren't really pushing their mixer very, very hard. So what if I just took this and just turned all of my gains up? So let's just choose, somewhere in the 9 to 12 dB. And I'm not going to spend really a whole lot of time making this all equal, but I'm just going to turn up the drum set. And then my overheads are a stereo. I got that set up as a stereo channel. Now when I play this, notice how much louder the drums are going to be. So you can see that's my main mix. And then now the aux mix with the master fader up at Unity as opposed to the main mix. Now we're really hearing the drum set. You're probably hearing it very close to the volume of my voice. So what I'm going to do now is I set this up before. So I created a stream. I created a scene where everything is at +12. So when I recall this, now all of a sudden, notice I'm going to switch back and forth between my front of house mix and my aux mix that's going to broadcast. You can barely hear the difference between them. And if I go back into my mixer, hit the wrong button here. So you can see the aux mix, And notice what's happening. Same amount of gain, same amount of reduction. And it's finally hitting the compressor on this aux mix. By the way, just for grins, this is me playing bass. Sidebar. This is my church. We multi-track. We multi-track this. And so, bass riff coming up. Anyway, so you can see right there, I created something that's really, really hot that can go out to broadcast, that that now I can get really good broadcast levels going to my stream. Now, obviously, you would say, well, Richard, at front of house, we're blowing people away with the volume that's happening out of the mixer into the amplifiers. And you would be 100% correct in saying that. So when I get someone who asks the question, how do I get a better broadcast mix with I've only got one mixer, how do I do both? What I always say is, you are using a live mixer and trying to make a broadcast mixer out of it, when you could consider creating a broadcast mix that just happens to be a live mixer. Now, we've got a lot hotter signal. We have a lot more usage of, if you're using a digital mixer, you've got a lot more usage of the bit depth of the, all of that. Even if it's an analog, you're using the full strength of the signal. All you have to do at that point is go to your PA speakers, or if you've got amplifiers that power passive speakers, and turn them down. So the experiment would be, turn them down all the way, get your hot broadcast mix sound, make sure that your gains are correct, and you decide for you where you want that to be. I like bringing things in on the Series 3 mixer. I like bringing things in -9, -6, something like that. Back in the analog days, when you would sum all of that together, you wanted to hit 0 VU or, +3. And once you cross +3, +6, you got a little distortion, which was okay in some scenarios. You can't do that in the digital world. If I cross 0 enough, we're going to get digital clipping. You don't want that. So you've got to choose a gain structure for each individual channel, to where when you put all of that together, it's not blowing your main output out of the water on the mixer itself. If it's a digital mixer, you don't want to ever have that crossing 0. You want that to be still -3 or something like that. An analog mixer, again, you can push it a little harder, but then you're also at that point converting to some sort of digital audio signal to go through vmix, OBS, or whatever you are streaming through. So there's still a ceiling that you need to make sure that you are staying under. So once you have that set up, and you've got a live mix and you've got a broadcast mix that's good and hot, then you can go and turn your amps up to where, I would say, turn them up to where it would be way too loud for everyone, and then back them down by like 10, 15%. And then you can kind of play with that until you've got a good equilibrium between hot broadcast feeds, a good use of your bit depth for front of house, and not too much volume. Now, with that said, this isn't something that, if you are not on staff at a church, if you're a volunteer, this isn't something that I'm advocating that you just go guns a-blazing and go do this. You should have a conversation with the people who are over that department, whether it be the worship pastor, the tech director, the pastor. This is something that you want to have a discussion and get permission to start to try this. But once you can show someone that you can get a good hot mix on your broadcast feed at the same time that you've got a decent mix, a good mix, a hot level on your live feed, which isn't blowing everyone out of the water, you've been able to accomplish 2 goals without purchasing anything. And, far be it for me, I did not want to make this a sales pitch for PreSonus. I just wanted to make this session something that would be useful for people where they are, because again, I have fielded this very question time and time again. And so that really wraps up what I wanted to discuss. We can do some live questions here before I move into the room. Tess, if you want to jump back in, this is really all I had to discuss.
Can you hear me yet, Richard?
Yes, I have you.
Awesome. Great presentation.
Thank you.
Very cool stuff. Let me open up the chat to see if we have any questions to address before you go into your private breakout room. Now, I just want to let the chat know, because it's a little bit different for Richard's breakout room. He has his own dedicated breakout room as a platinum sponsor. So if you want to access Q&A with Richard after his session, you're going to go back to the lobby of the Zoom event and then exit the PreSonus/Fender breakout room. Okay? All right. Well, you're getting a shout out from the Avsono team. Does that mean anything to you?
Hey, yeah, Avsono, yeah. He and I have been chatting about they do live stream over the cloud, live stream mixing over the cloud, and he and I have been talking about me helping him find churches who are willing to use their system, and we haven't chatted in about a month, but yeah, cool guy, good, cool solution of what they're doing. So if anyone is interested in that, you can send me an email. I can go back and let me share my screen again and go back to this keynote. Our Gaspard at fender.com. If you're interested at all in a cloud-based live streaming scenario, I can get you in touch with him. Then you guys can chat about that. But really cool product. It's going to be, I don't want to say a joint effort between them and PreSonus, but we are. I think he's got one of our Faderport 16s, my personal Faderport 16. He's got it that they've been messing with some stuff on that. So yeah, anyone can email me and I can get you in touch with him.
Awesome. John Cook is saying our powered speakers have no volume or gain control on them. How do I lower volume out of them with a hot broadcast mix besides master fader on my mixer?
A powered speaker should have a volume control on it somewhere. If he wants to email me the model of what it is, then maybe I can do a little bit of searching for him. But it's interesting to me to think that there would be no way to control the actual volume, the actual intensity of the signal. The workaround would be pulling the main fader way down, the main master fader way down, or doing some sort of gain reduction going to the speaker. But again, it's a give and a take. Right now, we have a lot of people who are using a weak signal into their board, so they got a super weak broadcast mix. We want to get the broadcast mix hot. You're going to have to increase individual channel gains on your mixer, but then you're going to have to throttle it some way. And the way I was advocating was throttling it by turning your amps down. But if you don't have amp control, then the way you would have to do it would be the master fader. But the good news is if you are running a post fader aux mix, the one fader that is not affecting your aux mix is your main mix master fader. All of your other channel faders are going to affect your post fader aux mix, but that's on a channel basis. It's not affected by your main master fader. So you could turn that up and down and it won't affect the aux master going to broadcast.
Okay. And one more before I let you go from James. In general, where should I be limiting my broadcast master bus to? e.g. minus 6 dB, minus 3 dB. That doesn't mean much to me, but hopefully you understand that.
The beautiful thing about audio standards is that there are so many to choose from. I know some people who choose -6. I know some people who do -3. I know some people who roll it all the way up to -1 or whatever. For me, a comfortable level is somewhere between -6 and -3. My wife and I have a YouTube channel, and I've been doing some things with my final mixes. I've been sending them all the way up to -1 to 0. The last one I did, I put it at -6 before exporting the song to YouTube, and YouTube took it and put it up hot. So there are things that are being done to the signal once it reaches the whatever the broadcast medium is online, that they have intelligent limiters that look at it, or I shouldn't say limiters. They have intelligent processing that looks at it and then automatically brings it up. You might want to research that. But if that is not happening, then you definitely want to get as close to 0 as possible without overdriving it. And for me, -6 to -3 is a good, comfortable range. The main point is you just don't want to have some parts of your service loud and some parts of your service quiet, because small speakers, computer speakers, iPhone speakers, all of that, they can't really replicate those volume changes like a large PA can do. So as long as you are keeping things from not getting too soft and not getting too loud, you're going to be okay. No matter what, if you go in that -3, -6 range. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. And ND really wants me to cover this question. Does having a separate audio interface for live stream, is it an overkill if one has a digital mixer?
It depends on the mixer. If it's a PreSonus mixer, all of our mixers are interfaces. So, literally the audio you were hearing was coming from this 32SC behind me via a USB port on my computer. And so my mixer was functioning as an interface. If your digital mixer is not a USB interface or some sort of audio interface, then you would need to come out of it into some sort of interface to convert it to digital. But most of them do on some level. It's not necessarily USB audio. It might be AES EBU or Dante or MADI or something like that you can take into your computer. That gets a little more complicated. If it's not a USB interface, class compliant USB interface on its own, the easiest way to do it would be just stereo out into some sort of audio interface into your computer.
Okay. Finally, Luke would like to say, I'd like to say that this is an awesome presentation, Richard.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I wanted to do something that would be useful, that would meet people where they are, that would give them some good information to go back and try things, and again, I didn't want to do a sales pitch. I just wanted to do something that would be useful for you guys.
Totally. So your breakout room is about to open in 20 seconds, literally.
Yep.
And that must be your alarm for it.
That was my 25 minutes, Richard. That's all you have.
That was
Chatty
perfect
Cathy.
timing then.
Yeah.
And yes, praise, the summit is recorded on YouTube.